School was secondary to me because I was highly ADHD, but at my age, that wasn't as much of a diagnosis. So I didn't actually know that till I was 25, and I started taking investment exams and couldn't study, like just could not focus. And so I went to get, diagnosed officially. But that's why I always struggled with school. So I could focus on athletics, and I was good at athletics, and I could pour my heart and soul into that. School was always a struggle for me. I was not only betrayed by the person that sued me, that I had recruited and developed and poured my entire life into, the company that I had represented, blood, sweat, tears, all the whole thing for 17 years that I had grown up in, because my father was there as well, completely betrayed me. Just in this earthly world, and your identity is in your title, your position, your marriage, or anything else earthly, that can be taken away from you. Now that I'm on the other side of that grief, that sorrow, all the different things, and processed everything and leaned into God had a bigger plan for me than I had for myself, I can speak to this and teach the lessons from it and help others overcome. God used me in that scenario so that I can help others.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Chief Hero Professional Problem Solver, coming to you live for another episode of The Overcomers. We have a very exciting guest. Our guest today is Josh Kosnick. He is the owner and the founder of Kairos Coaching and Consulting, LLC. He's veteran entrepreneur and a leadership coach, mentor, and consultant by trade. Before starting his leadership consulting business, Josh spent 17 years in the financial industry. He achieved great success as a producer, recruiter, and developer. At the age of 35, Josh sold his wealth management practice and was appointed the leader of a firm of over 100 advisors. Then at the age of 40, he sold that thriving business, which allowed him to the time, the focus, and the dedication to advancing his own legacy. Though Josh had an impactful run in the financial industry, his leadership skills are what separated Josh as one of a kind among his peers and competitors. Josh's strength in leadership lies in breaking down barriers that stifle people's success. Those include establishing a strong why, believing in others when they don't believe in themselves yet, staying grounded and being a rock for those he mentors, continuing to learn and grow, leading based on his value system, and not compromising for nothing. One of Josh's unique traits is that he passionately embraces the value of personal growth. Josh believes that there's always room for improvement, and he understands that to be the best on his team and clients and community and dedication to continuing education is the key to success. He lives by a motto to inspire people and impact lives in all areas of his life, personally and professionally. Outside of being a business owner, Josh is a family man who is just as impactful at home as he is at work. His wife, Jenna, and their 4 young children, Ella, Harper, Kensington, and Camden, attend Black Hawk Church. When Josh is away from work, he enjoys hunting with his dad, spending time at the family cabin compound, and cheering on the Wisconsin Badgers and Chicago Bears. He's a Bears fan. Bear down. Welcome, Josh Kosnick.
Thank you, Velko. Yeah, Bears fan in enemy territory in Green Bay Packer land. It's been a rough go for the majority of my adult years.
That's dangerous. Showing up with a Packers jacket around here, it's dangerous. Packers and the Bears.
That's right.
A big beef with the Packers we've got. Yeah, but the
That's
Bears,
right.
they haven't done well since the Urlacher time, since when we got so close, since we played Super Bowl and we lost. So it's been a while. They used to be famous with defense. We're not even good at that anymore. So it's been very disappointing, especially this season.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a little story of that Urlacher time. So my wife and I met right before the Colts and Bears played in the Super Bowl. And she's a Colts fan. She's from Indiana.
Mm.
So I'm texting her right at the start of the game. I'm like, hey, what's Devin Hester doing in the end zone already? And second half, I got real quiet, but it was a good time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm a man of faith. You're a man of faith. I'm a family man. You're a family man. So we've got a lot of things in common. I'm a business guy. You're a business guy. You like balance in all areas of life. You don't sacrifice your family for the business or your business for your family, which is good. It's hard to find balance, but you not only figured it out in your personal life, but you're also teaching other individuals how to achieve that good, healthy balance and build a business that supports their lifestyle versus the other way around. So I'm really looking forward to our conversation. By tradition, we start with a question that is interesting to most of our guests. I believe in a ripple effect. So I think that a lot of greatness and a lot of curses are just passed through generations. Sometimes we see a pattern where generation is being skipped. So sometimes a lot of our guests just continue the grandfather's mission or the grandmother's mission. So I wanted to ask you about your grandparents on both sides, your mom and dad. Tell us a little bit about them. What were their strengths? What did you learn from them? What kind of principles did they believe in throughout their life? And then share with us a little bit about your parents. What profession they have? What did you learn from them? Warnings, examples, things like that.
That's a good question. Great question. My grandparents, both sides, grew up hardworking, blue collar. My paternal grandfather worked two jobs. Both grandmothers stayed at home as traditional families back then. My maternal grandfather worked in a factory 40 years, earned his gold watch and pension, and sailed off into the sunset. But both lower class, just hardworking folks. So hard work definitely was a lesson that came across there. They were both faith driven. Both grandfathers served in our military in the U.S., one on the naval side, one in the Army, one grandfather, a Purple Heart, Korean War. So hard work, dedication, faith, pride in our country would be definitely values that we got from them, and love from my grandmothers. The amount of love that they poured into us as grandchildren through their food, through their hospitality, through just making us feel special in many ways that they could. What then that stems to my father, he was the first one to really break the family uh, social class, if you will. Like he chose to go into the financial advising field after working on a railroad and a glass cutting company out of high school. He really didn't do college. But after doing some blue collar work, he was introduced to the financial advising field. And that's really where his career took off. And I saw he started when I was 9 months old. And I got to see the progression of my family go from lower class to upper middle class. Each house, getting a little bit bigger as we moved from Illinois to Wisconsin. My dad took over a large financial firm, which I was blessed to take over in the future. And so it was really interesting to see that progression. I'm the oldest of four siblings, so I had a different perspective growing up than some of my younger siblings, because by the time they were born, we were already middle class. And then they only saw the progression from middle class to upper middle class, which wasn't as big of a progression, especially in the 80s and 90s in that realm. So awesome grandparents, all still, they're all deceased now, but stayed married their entire lives, and just great familial values passed down. My parents, fortunate to have them still married and are now retired and living the life of their dreams with their snowbirds, right? They got a lake house in middle of Wisconsin and a winter place down in Scottsdale, Arizona. So my parents are truly living the American dream, and because they worked really hard to build a life that we could try to emulate as children.
That's
And
awesome.
so through that, then Velko, I tried to stay away from my father. I tried to blaze my own path. He and I, through a younger age, just, we're a lot alike. So we were button heads, a lot of arguments, a lot of alpha ego stuff. And so I was working through my own sales career at Best Buy, sales manager, right out of school. Best Buy was a much bigger deal in the early 2000s than it is today. But great leadership program there. Went to some Covey stuff up in Minneapolis. Great leadership program that I learned and got my, earned some chops in that. And I was turned down for a raise. And I very quickly realized that I did not want anyone in control of my income anymore. So I reluctantly called my father and said, "Hey, I want to join the firm." And he very smartly said, "You're going to go through it, the interview process and everything else like everyone else, because you're already going to have a red target on your back with your last name being the same as mine." And I went through and built a great business, worked my ass off to build a great business and continue to propel my career in that same field that my father joined.
That's awesome. You had a very strong foundation, it seems, from both sides. What are some examples and warnings from your parents?
The thing I've been talking a lot about, even on my own podcast and just with coaching clients and stuff, is just because you were raised a certain way doesn't mean you should stay that way.
Right.
So I've talked about recently that my father wasn't great at expressing his emotions. In fact, I will say that in my early years, up until 20s, let's say, I could count on one hand how many times my dad said, "I love you," or that I'm proud of you. And as the oldest son, or any son, I would say, all you want to do is hear that your dad is proud of you. And so I grew up without that. So I learned how to live without it and get that in myself. But as I became a father, I realized that I did not want my kids to grow up like that. So my kids hear from me daily how I love them and how proud I am of them. And so I confronted my dad, and I can speak about this publicly because I did confront him about it. And he goes, "Well, where do you think I got that from?"
His dad.
From his father. Yeah. And I said, "That's fine, but you're the one that taught me that we can change. And that's not just in business. That's just not in socioeconomic status. That's in our own being.
Yeah.
So we can choose to change. We can choose to be the person that breaks the generational curse. We can choose to be the person that says, hey, no more of this. We're blazing a new path for the Kosnick family, both emotionally and socioeconomically." So that'll be one big one.
My dad told me he loves me for first time. I think I was 35 maybe or 37. Same situation. And before that, I've told him I love you. Now he says it very often. I think the grandkids now he
Yeah,
says it
same.
very often.
Same. I want to tell. I always say that. I missed that. He's very good at it now,
Or
and he has so many granddaughters that he has to be a big kind of mush pillow now. But yeah,
he tells his grandkids, "I love you" all the time. But and I used to tell him, "I love you" before because I wanted to hear it from him, and he would be like, "All right, cool." But he lost his dad when he was 17, so he never heard it from his dad probably, and that's why I don't blame him. I think that there was a lot of things in our relationship that were not perfect, especially growing up, and I had like 3 instances of forgiveness, of completely forgiving him. And as I grew older and became a father myself, I I was able to forgive him when I realized that one of the besides I was focusing a lot on the warnings, but one of the examples he gave me was that I've never heard him blame anyone or complain about anything or to have excuse about anything. So I was like, that alone deserves respect, especially in today's standard for a man. So when I told him that, that I really love you and respect you for those things that you displayed, those things with your example, he was touched, and I was like, I want to spend more time with you. And I see that you go hunting with your dad, so you still got that connection. You probably still have that little alpha competition with him,
yeah. I
especially
wouldn't say so much anymore. The alpha competition. More is it's interesting as you grow, as you get older. If you're blessed to get older with your parents, because not everyone gets that, like your father,
yeah,
for instance. You the glass kind of gets broken, right? Like you grow up thinking your dad's perfect and a hero and whatever it may be, and in some instances they are. But you, as you grow, you also see in the imperfections and the times that they might have screwed up as well. And you realize that, hey, I can choose to be like that, like sins of the father, if you will, or I could choose a different path, right? So it's interesting as you grow that, hey, dad wasn't perfect because he's a human. None of us are perfect.
Right.
But you get to choose your own path from that forward. You don't get. I don't think. I think most people just accept. Well, my dad was like that, so I'm going to be like that as well. No, you get to choose if you're going to be like that, and you get to choose if you're going to change.
And they had it way worse than we did.
Oh yeah, they
For
walked 10 feet uphill in snow both ways, right? Do you hear that story?
no.
My dad, so every dad I feel like has passed the story down is like, oh, you kids got it easy. We used to have to walk up this uphill both ways, 10 feet of snow barefoot to school each day. That was the story I always got, anyhow.
Yeah, but based on his father, who was hard worker, he implemented hard work into the financial industry, which is huge because if he outworks everybody, it's a numbers game. If
Hmm.
he brings that work ethic in the financial industry, most people are very comfortable in the financial industry or sales. So that's why you see a lot of people that come from blue collar or come from just hard work foundation, and they just kill it in sales or financial services or insurance, and or people that come from military background that have a lot of discipline and
Hmm.
just are very good at building habits, and they absolutely kill it in those industries. So your dad had to be the maverick, and then even though you had to work hard to prove yourself because everybody was pointing the finger at your dad when you were growing up in your industry, it's still he gave you that opportunity in a way. It was
Yeah.
already kind of set up. So, and hopefully, of course, you're probably going to pass it on to your four children, and they're going to beat your records and take the Kosnick legacy to uh, upper class.
Well, that's the trick, and that's the hope, right? I think the trick of it is once you become wealthy or once you become really successful, it's how do you give your kids, your kids are already living a life. So I'll give you an example. So we have this box at the Badger game right on the field. And it was the first time we got it 2 years ago as they redid the stadium. And my kids, I take them to their first Badger game. And they're sitting in these swivel back chairs. And we have a server and they can go inside to the get as much food as they want, as much candy as they want, whatever. And I'm sitting there back, I'm like, my kids are so spoiled. Like, they're not sitting in between two fat drunk guys screaming at the top of their lungs on a cold bleacher. They got these swivel back chairs, a server to every beck and need they have. Uh, totally comfortable watching this football game where a football may bounce into our suite. Like, but at the same point, I think too many parents that get to the point that maybe you or I have gotten want to give their kids everything they didn't have. Or
Yeah.
my trick is I want to teach them the things that I didn't know and experience things with them that I didn't experience potentially with my parents because my dad was always on the grind creating this lifestyle that he never had. So it's this balancing act of creating experiences and teaching them things that you didn't know so they can elevate beyond where we are at. But I see too many wealthy people just give their kids things, get the silver spoon syndrome, and then their kids turn out to be total flameouts or fuck ups because they gave them things, they didn't teach them things.
It's the biggest curse if you think about it,
Yes.
and it curses legacy and generations. My parents, my dad specifically, my mom was really soft and loving. She loved me unconditionally, so she taught me how to love. But my dad, and that's kind of how I love my children, and my daughter especially. And my dad used to do a takeaway, like if you don't do this, I'm taking away this. If you so fear of loss, he used to discipline me. Um, so I did that with my daughter. She's 12 in the beginning, and then maybe when she was like 4 or 5, I switched because as a kid, I was like, I'm gonna give everything to my children. I had to beg my dad for nicer shoes, for just for things, for bicycle. He never bought me a bicycle, so things like that. As I was going through this, I was thinking, I'm going to give my kids everything. Once when I grow old, I'm gonna get rich and give them everything. And I did in the beginning, and here I am giving my daughter everything. But um, because I was raised this way, I used the fear of loss in the first 4 or 5 years. So I was like, if you don't do this, then I'm gonna take this away. And then I saw the fear of her losing her stuff, and then I realized she's only doing it because she doesn't want to lose this stuff, not because it's the right thing to do. So then I switched to hope to gain, and said, if you do this, then I'll give you that, something newer, something nicer. And now she's outsmarting me at my own game. She would be like, what are you gonna give me if I do this? It's like, hey, you're supposed to do this for free. You don't need anything to do that. Uh, so, but it's good. It's better to teach them with hope to gain versus fear of loss. And
Yes.
another thing is, I'm a first generation immigrant, so I brought my parents here from Europe, and all these missed moments that I had with my dad because he was also always working away from home, like the shoe thing. I had like 120 pairs of shoes, and we were the same size. So he was just shocked when he saw how many pairs of shoes I have. I'm like, you can have whatever pair you want. Pick any of them. Those are yours. I'll buy new ones. And I didn't have bicycle, so I bought him like a $1,000 bicycle. We went biking together. So we caught up on the moments that we missed when I was a kid, when I was in my mid 20s, early 30s, and tried to rebuild our relationship. So now I definitely want to be way more present for my son. My son is 4 months old, and I want to do it completely different. So there was a lot of wisdom that I learned through the warnings and the examples.
Yeah. Which is
We gotta
great.
we gotta do better as fathers.
Yep. It's constant work.
Yeah, it's constant work, constant development, and I gave my life to Jesus on Father's Day, and I led my father to Jesus on Father's Day. And when he got baptized, when he got baptized on that Father's Day, it just clicked in me, and I was able to understand God the Father, God Almighty, how good of a father He is, and I understood what my dad is going through. I understood what I'm going through as a father, and who God is as a father, and it's just following God's example on how He parents is the best system. Instead of He gives us the information, He gives us the wisdom, and then He allows us to make mistakes,
Hmm.
and He forgives our mistakes, and He discipline us sometimes. So it's good. It's all good. Josh, tell me a little bit about your childhood. What is your first conscious moment? When did you realize, oh, I exist, I'm alive? How old were you? What is your first core memory?
Wow. I don't know that I've ever been asked that, Velko. Um, hmm. I have this vision of me crawling, actually, that's been persistent in an apartment that my mom and I were in as my dad was transitioning the family when he first started in the financial services
Mm,
field. And I remember crawling and being in this really tiny apartment and kitchen. I think that's my first conscious memory and it's crazy because I've asked my mom about it, that I could actually describe what it looked like, and she confirmed.
that's awesome. That's way early. That's probably a year and a half, 2 years,
So yeah, maybe a year, who knows?
maybe a
But
year.
yeah,
A lot of people, they remember like 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old, 2 years old. My first one is, I think I was 2 years old. Our moms remember everything. They'll tell you stuff from from when you were 6 months old.
and
But
they
if you
like
were,
to repeat stories.
yeah, if you were crawling, it could be even before you were 1 year old.
Could be.
Remember it.
Yeah.
So, tell me about high school. did you what was your culture like? Were you heavy metal? Were you a rapper? Skateboard?
Yeah, I was a jock, but the I'll tell you I was heavily influenced by hip hop.
Hip
In
hop?
fact, my paper route when I was seventh grade, I had a paper route that 363 mornings a year up at the break of dawn, delivering papers to the neighborhood, um, which taught me a lot about work ethic and commitment, and actually even sacrificed by my parents, because if I was sick, those papers still had to get delivered. So someone in my mom or dad had to get up and do those. I wasn't sick often, but anyhow, I my first cassette tape, telling
Mm-hmm.
my age a little bit, was NWA, and I had to hide it in my paper route bag because I know my mom would not have approved of me listening to an NWA cassette tape. But I was heavily influenced by hip hop. I was a football player. Football primarily. I did almost every sport, but I went on to college to play football. I actually didn't go to college to go to college. I went to college to continue playing football. Probably not the best intention, but it was what it was. So I was in the weight room. I was into every sport, every season that I could be. School was secondary to me because I was highly ADHD, but at my age, that wasn't as much of a diagnosis.
Yeah.
So I didn't actually know that till I was 25, and I started taking investment exams and couldn't study, like just could not focus. And so I went to get diagnosed officially. But that's why I always struggled with school. So I could focus on athletics, and I was good at athletics, and I could pour my heart and soul into that. School was always a struggle for me.
Did they give you what do they take for ADHD?
Well, there's a few medicines, but I took Adderall for about a decade
Yeah.
as I was building my career and studying for all the exams that I had to take in the investment field.
Was it helpful?
It was extremely helpful. Yeah, and then so for me, I didn't want to be beholden to a pharmaceutical the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So I figured out systems and ways where I don't necessarily need to. I'm still it's still me, but I've now figured out ways to operate without having to be on a pharmaceutical.
That's awesome. Congratulations on that.
Thanks.
Yeah, I worked with someone who was on Adderall, and he just really enjoyed it and had hard time quitting.
I actually needed it to function properly, to study and focus and build my career and pass those exams. I took a lot of exams in my career. And so it was necessary. I've seen a lot of people take it recreationally. And if you're doing it for fun versus purpose, then yes, I would think it would be much harder to get off.
Yeah, yeah. I probably had the same thing going on, but I just skipped. Like, I remember before my sales career started, I was between car sales and real estate, and because real estate had an exam, and before that, I used to sell life insurance, so I wanted to pass that investments exam too, and I couldn't. I just couldn't. Like, I would read one page 100 times, and nothing goes in.
Well,
So
they are quite boring.
yeah, but I'm addicted to learning. Like, if it's something that I'm really interested, like I was so obsessed with sales and psychology and how people make decisions and all that, and I really absorb by like a sponge. I could watch something or read a book about business and sales, and I'm really interested in that. So I think it's probably kind of like a defense mechanism. But I went to car sales because for the simple reason that I had to pass a real estate exam. Otherwise, I really wanted to be a realtor, but the exam was what I stayed away. I didn't like school either. So look at me now, I'm a teacher. Either way, uh, it's probably things that we're not interested in. Our brain is fighting and be like, hey, this is not who you are. Stay away from this,
Yeah.
because I'm sure there's some things that right now you're very interested in, and all you need to do is glance once, read it once, and you kind of like have almost like photographic memory about things that you actually care about dearly. Like you see a quote somewhere and you remember it for the rest of your life or something like that.
Potentially. I would say that's still very hard for me. I know people like that. I'm actually very good at memorizing numbers. Like I know my driver's license number for absolutely no reason, just because I can picture it. But I'm not that way with quotes.
This is like a lost art. My dad used to know everybody's phone number by heart. And we used to know at least 30, 40 phone numbers growing up before the cell phones
Hmm.
show up. And now Hopefully, my wife is not watching this, but I I still don't know her number. I know maybe 5 digits of the whole number. If I need to call someone, I'm in trouble.
In an emergency situation, you are in trouble, my friend.
Yeah, I need to learn it, or maybe get a tattoo with her number somewhere. 630. I remember. I need to learn the whole thing. Anyways, tell me about your first love.
First love. You know what's interesting? You think back about that. For me, I didn't have a first real love until I met my wife because I didn't know what love was. So, did I have a love in high school? Yeah. College? Not really. When I met my wife, I was totally blown away
Mm.
and actually knew love.
You knew she was the one.
Yeah, but like I proposed after 6 months of dating. Like it was just totally different. And so it's interesting. You look back at that type of stuff, and at least for me, there might be people that have loved more than once. For me, that has not been the case. I don't think I truly loved anyone until I met my wife. And I also think, and I've given many of advice from siblings to others that you really can't love anyone until you truly love yourself. And
True.
that's a maturation that takes time.
Yeah, because for different reasons we sabotage ourselves, and it's hard to figure it out for many, especially if we didn't get a lot of encouragement growing up. But loving yourself, it's your duty. How do you think? What do you think are practical advices for those of you that are watching right now? Josh, can you give those viewers some practical ways to start the process of loving themselves more?
Well, I'm going to take this from a faith perspective because that's the only way I can speak to it. I think it's a lot harder if you don't have a higher belief in some other higher power. I mean, the Bible directly speaks to what God thinks you are.
Right.
Right? So it's less about what others in the earthly realm think you are and more about who he thinks we are and how much love he has for us. It's hard to imagine, especially us as parents, that as much as we love our kids, that he loves us more than that. It's hard to imagine.
Yeah.
And because of that, so if you get into scripture and really feel about how God loves you and so we are made in God's image. Well, what does the Bible say about God's image then? A lot of people think, well, we're just made in his likeness. So in human form is what our mind goes to. But in reality, that says God is love. So then what are we? Well, then we are love. If God has infinite power, I don't think that we have infinite power. Otherwise, I'd teleport to you today and do this podcast live.
Well, technically, you're teleporting via StreamYard right now.
Yeah, but we'd be better in person, right?
Yeah, of course.
Teleportation would be my superpower if I could have one.
That's probably coming in the next couple of years.
I can't do that. That's something God could do. Right
Yeah.
now, I don't believe that we are infinite power, but I do believe we have infinite depths to the powers that he gave us. And we got to seek that out. So, but the point is that God is love and so are we. So I think there's some practical steps that you can take to love yourself by taking care of yourself first and foremost.
Yeah.
You got to love the body that you're in. And you can't tell me that a 400, 500 pound person loves the body that they're in. They don't look in the mirror and go, this is it.
Yeah, you're right.
And then, so there's all these different steps, like truly loving yourself, taking care of yourself, taking care of your body, taking care of your mind, taking care of your soul. Those things, where you show that. And that's like why on the airplane, and the example that leadership experts will always use is you got to put your oxygen mask on before you help anyone else. You have to start with you taking care of you, not in a selfish way. It's to be selfless.
Yeah.
So I think there's practical steps in getting into the word and knowing who he created you to be. And the love that you want to pour out to others only can be when you truly love yourself. And I think part of that is, so how do you develop self-confidence, self-efficacy? It's keeping the promises that you make to yourself. How could anyone love anyone when they're constantly breaking promises? You wouldn't do that to a relationship, or if someone that you're in a relationship with broke every promise that they made to you, you wouldn't be in a relationship with them anymore. Now, reverse that and think about how many promises you break to yourself. I'm not talking about you, but I'm talking about others. But we break promises to ourselves all the time. And so if you truly want to love yourself, keep your promises to yourself. And your self-confidence and your self-efficacy will just soar. It'll exude.
We let ourselves off the hook easier too. We keep other people accountable easily. That's why when you said how can you do it, I was gonna say 75 hard. That's how you do it.
That's one way. That's one way. And that builds up that self-efficacy of like, hey, I kept these promises to myself. That's why it's a mental toughness program, not a physical training program.
Yeah, the physical transformation is just a bonus,
It's a
but the
byproduct.
mental, yeah, the mental transformation is where is where it's at. When I did it the first time, I realized that I haven't showed up for myself in so many areas of my life. Like just I felt guilty for working out, and I felt guilty for taking care of my diet and things like that, and eating clean food. So this is one way to learn how to love yourself, going through that challenge. And it's not as challenging as it sounds. um, but that's definitely helpful for me. And when you said trusting God of what he thinks about us, we're both into self-development, we're both into self-awareness and learning who we are every single day. So even if you spend your lifetime learning who you are and developing yourself and going through exploring your potential, we know ourselves probably 50% at most. That means our parents and our children know us about 30% because we have secrets from them, they have secrets from us. And that means our siblings, because I think as we grow older, we kind of grow apart from our siblings. We don't get super close. I mean, with some cases we get closer, but I think as we grow older, we kind of grow apart. So they probably know us about 18, 20%. Our best friends probably around there, 18, 20%. And people that we work with, maybe 10%. The rest of it is assumption of who they
Mm.
think we should be or who they think we are. And strangers that met us once or twice or had one conversation with us, they know us probably 1%, 5%. And that's why God says, only trust who I say you are. Don't trust other people's opinion, whether they're good or bad. And for many years, I put definition to love that love is sacrifice, that it involves suffering. But I don't think this way anymore. I think that it's not a requirement for love to be sacrificed, but now I say love is obedience because sacrifice is easy. Everybody can sacrifice something, but obedience is hard. Doing the right thing for yourself, having high integrity in taking care of yourself, that's hard.
Mm.
A lot of people would say the 400 or 500 pound people would say that they actually sacrifice themselves in that self-destructive behavior, and would probably blame somebody else for their situation, and would lose, people who are suicidal, they lose perception of reality. And that's what suicide is. It's a sacrifice. They want to kill themselves. So love, I don't think is as much sacrifice as it is obedience and integrity, which is kind of like loyalty to himself. Just my definition is changing with maturity.
No, I
what
think that's well said.
what's your definition for love?
100-0.
100
I'm gonna,
0,
yeah,
100%.
100%. And so a lot of times people go into relationships thinking 50-50. And so then you're saying, well, you could have this perception that you're giving 60 right now and she's only giving 40, and that's
Hmm.
unfair. However, if you're thinking 100-0 is I'm just going to give all of myself to the person that I love, which A is you, and then B is whoever else you truly love in your life. There is no expectation of return. You're
Yeah,
just going to love without expectation, like God does of us. Like, well, think about that. So God knows we're going to screw up.
yeah.
He knows we're going to sin, and it's unconditional love anyhow. It's 100-0. And so my definition of love for those that I love, my children, my wife, I'll just leave it at that for now. Myself, it's 100-0.
That's awesome. And I'm so grateful that my wife and I have the same covenant. We have the same agreement that we're going 100. And it's, you said it right. It's not 50-50. It's not a competition, but it's given 100% all the time because we're not always going to be at 100. So We got to cover each other's back without
Mhm.
expectation of return.
And sometimes you'll be able to give more than she can and vice versa.
Yeah. And we're
So again, if you're giving 100-0, she's giving her 100, you're giving your 100. It's not a competition. It's being strong when they're weak, and vice them being strong when you're weak, because we're all going to go through ups and downs and ebbs and flows of life, and we got to be each other's rock.
speaking of ups and downs, what would you describe as, give me top 3 of your biggest challenges that you overcame, the biggest crisis in your life, when you felt like giving up, when you felt doubt in yourself, when you felt that some things that are happening to you are 100% unfair?
Okay, so first of all, I've never felt like giving up. That just doesn't cross my mind. However, that doesn't mean that I haven't faced significant challenges in my life.
Top 3.
So the first one is the most recent one. 2 years ago, when I sold my firm, that wasn't a happy ending. Although the monetarily, someone might be like, "Josh, how could you say that's not a happy ending?" Well, that wasn't my intention to sell my firm at that point in my life. When I took over the firm, I was 36. My plan was to go till 56, run it as big and as great as possible, grow this completely unique firm to the financial industry, and leave it in better hands going forward, develop the next leader. That didn't happen. I had a young advisor on my team who is a solid young leader, solid young producer, but a cancer of a person.
Mm.
And he, at the right time, played the race card in the climate of 2021, where that was very, very predominant in our news cycle, and sued me for discrimination, even though I had poured my entire life into him to try and get ahead. That was his intention. And the company that I represented ended up, to get themselves out of the suit, terminated me. Now, we had to negotiate a buyout after that and whatever. So that's how it ended up being okay. And, I'm able to do what I'm able to do today. However, that wasn't what I wanted. I was not only betrayed by the person that sued me, that I had recruited and developed and poured my entire life into, the company that I had represented, blood, bled, sweat, tears, all the whole thing for 17 years that I had grown up in, because my father was there as well, completely betrayed me. And so I was dealing with a level of betrayal and hurt and sorrow and grief and all the different negative emotions that I had never felt before, plus the loss of identity. And it's one of the lessons that I took out of it, is that you can have no identity in this earthly world. Your only identity can be found in Christ. Because if it is just in this earthly world, and your identity is in your title, your position, your marriage, or anything else earthly, that can be taken away from you.
Yeah.
Just like that.
Wise
And
words.
so it's, now that I'm on the other side of that grief, that sorrow, all the different things, and processed everything and leaned into God had a bigger plan for me than I had for myself, I can speak to this and teach the lessons from it and help others overcome, help others see potential cancers on their teams that could evolve into a bigger issue like it became for me. I can help people overcome those problems. Like, I know God used me in that scenario so that I can help others. And but I'll tell you, man, when that happened, I thought it was like a fog that I couldn't see anything other than than just nothing. Go from the mountaintop to curled up in the fetal position in my basement. I just lost everything except for my family.
What was the part that was most painful? Was it the betrayal of your company? Was it the false accusation? And what did you hear from God during those times of crisis?
That's a good question. It was actually the betrayal of the company. The person, I had seen some stuff in him over the 18 months prior to that the betrayal from him didn't surprise me. In fact, one of the lessons, again, I should have terminated him 18 months prior to that instance, but I was afraid of getting sued.
Hmm.
And what happened anyhow? Kept him on, kept pouring into him, kept paying him, kept having him over for dinner with my family, like all these different things. And 18 months later, it turned out that he's going to sue me anyhow. So that was another lesson. So it was the betrayal of the company where they, I've been, we grew 30% through COVID on all sides. like through a pandemic, we were killing it. And then on the other side of that, then because this person throws a wrench in there and they wanted to avoid the lawsuit themselves, which they're a $350 billion company. It would have been not even a pimple on an elephant's ass to them to help me and stand by me, one of their young rising leaders, to stand by me and help me fight that thing.
Yeah.
They chose to get out of it because of publicity or how it might look. So
Yeah.
it was definitely the
Politics.
betrayal of them. It was politics. It was, societal pressure, whatever it may be. That was the hardest piece by far. And then, because it was partly I succeeded my father in that, seeing the hurt in him, which by the way, I'm through this totally now and in a really good place. But if it ever comes up, my wife and dad will still get protective and hurt and stuff. So there's sometimes I have to exit those conversations because I'm beyond where they're at emotionally on the processing scale. But yeah, just all of that involved is you asked about my childhood, stuff was pretty good for me. I wasn't abused, didn't have any tragedies with parents like many have had. I've lost friends, stuff of that nature. But this was something that even though I've told people, you can live a great life, you can be very blessed. And then there's still going to be stuff that just completely sweep your legs out from underneath you, that completely punch you in the gut, take the wind out of you. There's still going to be things, we're all going to have hardships, and we got to keep moving forward.
Yeah. And your father probably felt partially betrayed as well, because he poured his life into that company, and his legacy was diminished when they didn't do the right thing and protect you and defend you.
Correction, I will say this. I won't say that his legacy was diminished, because our legacy wasn't the name on the building. Our legacy wasn't the trophies. It wasn't the pictures on the wall. Our legacy resides in those people that we changed their lives.
Yeah.
So our legacy, even though the betrayal hurt for both of us, even though the company, tried to delete the Kosnick name essentially in that, they couldn't, because we impacted so many people on our journey, and our legacy is in those people.
Yeah, that's very well said. And what about the second most challenging moment in your life?
This one's probably a little bit more emotional, just because it's too close to home. But again, it wasn't about me giving up. It was more just a very tough life scenario where I was actually about to leave the country. I was taking my top advisors and their spouses to Mexico, and my phone started blowing up. And I was packing. We had a newborn baby boy, and she's breastfeeding and getting him to sleep before my mom came over to watch the kids while we were taking the company top producers on this trip. And I finally got the call, and I finally picked up my phone, and it was my wife's aunt. And she said, "Josh, don't get on the plane." And she went on to tell me that my wife's father shot himself.
Wow.
And so my relationship with him, unlike a lot of father-in-laws and son-in-law relationships, was very different. He was like a second father to me. I described him, even though he would never describe himself like this, as the closest thing walking this earth to Jesus. That's how good of a man he was and how faithful he was. To gather myself and control my own emotions in that moment and somehow go upstairs and tell my wife that news, I never want to have to do that again.
Your wife knew before you, or you knew before her? Who called you? Your
My aunt,
secretary called you?
no. My wife's aunt
Oh, okay.
called me,
His
and so
sister.
I had to deliver that news to my wife.
There's no good strategy to deliver that news. There's
No,
nothing. There's no good way of doing it.
no, and anyone that's received that call, it's absolutely gut wrenching. Whether it's suicide or that they lost, a loved one in a car accident or anything sudden like that, there's nothing to prepare you for receiving that call or that knock at the door. Nothing. And so it's like now, I had my COO on my way to my house. She was going to carpool to Chicago to fly out of O'Hare. I'm telling her, I was like, "Hey, change of plans. You go. We got to stay here." I had to, drive my wife to Indiana to be with the family. There's nothing in life can prepare you for that, but it's going to happen. Death happens. I'm not saying suicide is going to happen for everyone. God, I hope not, even though rates are upticking uncontrollably. However, it's one of those things where none of us are getting out of this alive.
Right.
So how do you deal with that? How do you honor their memory? How do you continue to learn and grow? Like, I've leaned into helping a lot of people with mental health and brain health, trying to change the narrative around suicide, talking about it far more. So is my mother-in-law. She's bravely told her story on my podcast. She's bravely told her story on TV to be able to give people hope that you can move forward in the most tragic of scenarios. She found him, right? Like, how do you get that out of your mind?
Oh,
Like, so it's just those things, like, to be able to, she's an inspiration to watch her continue to move forward, to see her still go through waves of grief almost 6 years later. Like, so a lot of people think like death, and especially a tragic death like this, like, oh, they'll get over it in a few months. So like somebody read, like, no, grief comes in waves.
yeah.
And you don't know when that wave's going to come and crash into your face. And so she may wake up one day and,
Smell something.
laissez-faire, smell something, see something,
Mhm.
have a memory triggered in her head, and
A song.
boom,
Yep.
song, PTSD, like all the different things. Like, so grief comes in waves and it never goes away. So it's one of those things where you got to get the help that you need. You got to take care of yourself so that you can, again, move forward and be that light for others.
Do you think believers who commit suicide go to heaven?
Yes. And here's why. We all make mistakes. We've all sinned in our lives. Think about the two men on the crosses that were up there with Jesus. One of them gave his life to Jesus on the cross. If my memory is serving me correctly, he was a murderer.
Yeah.
Jesus says, I'll see you on the other side. The other did not. So just because someone's last moment was that, and they spent their whole life being a believer and a person that poured their life into Jesus, I don't believe that their last moment defined them. And especially with those that struggle with brain health. Here's the analogy. One of my good friends is Tom Farley. It's for those that recognize the last name, it's Chris Farley's older brother.
Oh, he's from Chicago.
They're actually from Madison.
Are they really?
Yeah.
Oh.
So they're from Madison, Wisconsin. They went to Madison Edgewood High School. Now Chris performed in Chicago and lived in Chicago for a while. Yeah. But
he looks
so
just like him, right?
They look quite a bit alike. And by the way, the whole family's funny. Chris was by far the star and most gregarious, but the whole family's funny. So Tom was telling me and gave me this example like this. Imagine you're in a burning building and there's only one door, one exit. I mean, the whole room, the whole building's on fire. There's only one door that's an exit. And that exit is kill yourself. That's what it's like to be in the mind of someone that's not mentally well and not in a position that's like, that's the only way they see out. It's the only way they see out. And so without that support and without people being able to be around them and recognize that they're really struggling and help them get out, that's the only way they see out.
Yeah, you're right. It's really a desperate moment, and it takes a lot of, I think it takes a lot of bravery to take your own life. It's not an easy decision.
No, it's like, and I've even had a very vivid dream. And actually his good friend and pastor had the almost identical dream. So we kind of question, like, was it a dream at this point? Where he talked to us in our dream, my father-in-law.
Oh.
Talked to me and one of his best friends that shared this very vivid dream that I share about that he tried to take it back in the moment and couldn't.
It was too late.
It was too late.
He had already pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
Yeah. You guys didn't expect it from him. It was completely unexpected.
No, well, so my mother-in-law held it pretty tight to the vest, how stressed he was and the mental condition he was. We saw it at Christmas a little bit. I spent 2 hours standing with him in a laundry room, and these are like one of those regrets like you go back to because you all have it as like you wish you would have known or you wish you would have done something different, and it's an evil game to play with yourself, by the way. But we all have it for that are survivors of loved ones that have taken their own lives. Um, I spent 2 hours because he didn't want my wife to hear what he was saying to me. So we were in their laundry room with the door shut, having this conversation, and I'm trying to help him through it. And I'm trying to practically give him business advice and give him like, hey, not recognizing that it wasn't business advice that he needed. He was struggling mentally and emotionally, and he needed something different from me. And again, I don't know that I've gotten help with this. Like people told me, like, Josh, you don't know that whatever you said that time may not have reached him. But in that moment, I wasn't recognizing where he was at. And none of us would ever thought like one of the strongest people that we've ever known would have taken their own life.
Yeah.
So it was an utter surprise.
We usually don't see it coming. And my wife and I had a long debate and discussion because she had a friend that took her life, and she was really faithful believer, and she also believed that she's in heaven. So I like that analogy with the only door because sometimes mentally it's difficult. It's very difficult, especially if you don't have the right support. My friend just lost his niece, and she didn't kill herself, but she died from several different reasons. Um, she kind of killed herself slowly. You know what I mean? She developed diabetes and all kinds of addictions, and just um, slow suicide. And he's an amazing believer. He's an apologist in his church. He knows the gospel in and out. And some of his last conversations with her were he was giving her practical advice, worldly advice, something like the way you're sharing, giving him a business advice. And he was kind of telling her, you got to stop doing this, stop doing that. And when he went to the hospital while she was in coma, um, Jesus spoke to him. And he was like, "Oh, great job. You were supposed to share the gospel with her. That's the one thing you're required to do." And you were giving her your personal advice. And he called me. He was bawling. He was like, "Please don't make the same mistake as me. Every time when you are in crisis with someone who had just lost hope, because she lost hope, she really wanted to sacrifice herself, and she had 3 kids, and he called her selfish and things like that, and she had lost all the hope. And he was just very sincere and said, our duty as Christians is to share the gospel every opportunity we get, and ask God, what do I need to say to this person? Give me the words, give me the right scripture, or give me something so I can pass on your hope to him or her. And a lot of times we try to fix it with logic, but to them it's not logical. It's beyond logic. And who knows where we're gonna be at what point of our life. A lot of people say, "Oh, they get lost in their morning." So how do we know how long we have? We have no
Mhm.
idea when our clock is gonna stop ticking. So
Let me see if I can remember these 3 questions because it may help someone listening.
yeah,
The first one is, are you thinking about killing yourself? The second one is, do you have the means to kill yourself? Gosh, I can't remember the third one. But let's start with those 2 questions. Kevin Hines, who survived jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge, who's dedicated his life to helping people overcome brain health, gave me these 3 questions when I interviewed him. And this was about a year ago. So I'm missing that third one. I might
what
remember
does
it, but
that mean? Do you have the means to kill yourself? Like, do you have the resources?
mhm.
Um,
Yeah. So basically, what you're doing is you're like, if you see someone struggling, and you think that they are headed down this path, you want to kind of call it out instead of hide from it. Most of us
right.
want to hide from it, and so you're asking a very pointed question: have you thought about killing yourself? Do you have the means to kill yourself? Meaning they've thought it. Now, the second question is, have they thought it through enough where they've either bought the rope or they've got the gun or whatever it may be, or the pills or whatever they've taken it to another level beyond the thought.
Start planning.
They've started planning. Now they have the means,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it layers that question. Gosh, I can't remember the third one right now as we're off the top of my mind. Oh, that's disappointing. But anyhow, those are two first questions start because you're trying to make it real, and now it's like, okay, can we get them the help?
Yeah.
And B, don't try and like whatever you do, don't try to psychoanalyze, blame, blah blah blah. It's be there for them, hug them, support them, and try and get them help.
Yeah, it's a very difficult topic. I've had someone who's really, really close and have pulled the suicide card multiple times, dozens of times, and would like call me and say, I'm gonna kill myself. I'm killing myself right now. And I would drop everything and rush and try to help. And eventually it became really heavy thing because the threats were like dozens of threats, and I remember just praying to God and realizing that eventually we all gonna die one way or the other. So I just made peace that this person eventually is going to die, whether it's now, whether it's tomorrow, whether it's 80 years from now, and eventually I will die, and I could die before that person. So I was like, I did something similar. You said, okay, if you're gonna do it, just don't make a big mess because probably I will have to clean it up. That was the first thing I said. And it was a pattern interrupt for the person. They didn't expect me to say that because I would always try to talk them out of it and, give them courage, give them hope. And the second thing was when you do it, you're going to feel immediate regret and you're going to end up in hell and the devil is going to be there and you're going to hear on repeat my words. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. And the devil's going to have a big smile like he just tricked you, like he just lied to you and got you into doing it. And that's why, please don't do it. And that person told me for first time, I'm a chicken. I'm not gonna do it. I would never kill myself. And I was like, all right, good. We're done with that. Please don't use it against me anymore because I love you so much. And it hurts me every time when you say that. Because there are some people that would pull that card to get attention, but they wouldn't do it.
Yeah,
And
unfortunately, that's true. And unfortunately, you probably don't. It's really hard to tell the difference.
right, it's really hard. So I'm saying this right now only because there was dozens of occasions when it didn't happen, and eventually I was like, I need to change the way I handle this, and it ended up working out. But I would definitely not recommend for the viewers and listeners to do that with people who are going through actual crisis and are
Mhm.
really considering that because number one, I'm not sure if they're going to hell or heaven. Like I am more likely to believe that they're going to heaven, if they gave their life to Jesus and if they believe in God. Um, but it's good for us to be prepared because you never know when it's gonna happen and who's gonna uh, who's gonna do it, especially in moments of crisis like that. Like a lot of people do it when it's completely unexpected,
Well,
and they,
that's what. Yeah, that's what I would say is check on your happy friends too. It's not the people that are pulling the card like that most of the time.
yeah,
Think about Chris Farley. Think about Robin Williams. Think about all the comedians we've lost that spent their lives making others happy,
yeah.
and then feeling this deep burden internally that most people did not know about them. And then, that we're all surprised. So it's not just checking on your friends that seem in a depressive state. It's actually checking on your friends that spend their lives helping others and maybe not helping themselves.
I think actually most comedians are hiding and and their way of medicating themselves is making other people laugh. and being around them.
I don't know enough statistics or know enough comedians to say if that's true or not. I just can use them as examples of people that several that are high profile ones that have taken their own lives. That I use as examples. Like it's not just your people
Right.
that think are depressed.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But suicide is definitely it's sad for everyone involved. It's really sad because life is beautiful, and whatever time we have on earth has its own purpose. So we need to be more aware. A lot of people, like the suicide, had increased with COVID and with in the last few
Lockdowns.
years quite a bit with PTSD and people just being lost. Mental health is in crisis.
Well, isolation is the worst for anyone. And so with the lockdowns, that was a big problem. And that's why we're not even seeing the full numbers on that yet.
Yeah, and also the abuse of alcohol and different drugs, and
Mm-hmm.
I've studied depression quite a bit, and it's impossible to heal from depression if you abuse alcohol. It's just like the biggest depressant. If there's a chemical out there that will cause depression, alcohol is the best one. So everybody makes a personal choice, but definitely drugs and alcohol don't help with going through crisis.
Agreed.
And what about your third biggest challenge in your life?
There's no other bigger challenge. Those two are so monumentally
Big.
more, yeah, big that there's no third one that would even compare. So we'll leave it at those two.
So I had interview with Dr. DeMartini. He's the one of the guys that was part of the documentary The Secret. Have you remember that
Mm-hmm.
documentary with
Mm-hmm.
the law of attraction and all that? So he believes that each one of our challenges, emotional traumas, crises in our life are designed to prepare us for next level, for something way bigger, and they're actually the beginning of blessing. So what good came out of your biggest challenges? What good came out of the of you being sued and accused and losing your job, and also from the suicide of your father-in-law?
Yeah, so I think those have been recent enough where like the good is still coming.
Okay.
Now there's been like there's so from the suicide standpoint, to see my mother-in-law thrive, uh, not every day, but overall, thrive and tell her story and continue to impact others. And same for myself and my wife as we share what happened and how give hope to others, and hopefully others won't have to experience the pain that we did. So I think there's been some good from that. And now my mother-in-law is remarried. She never planned on it, but a special guy came into her life that um, their hearts connected. So there's been some good there. Regarding the firing and losing my business and everything I built, um, there's this whisper that I got from God, even in my deepest grief, that said, "You're free."
Mm.
And it was interesting. I didn't want to hear it at the time. I completely blocked it out, but I remembered it as I got more free or more time away from the instance. Because in the firm, I was impacting those 250 people that were in my business. And they were impacting a lot of people as well. So I had a ripple effect there. But outside the firm, and what I've built with my social media and being more honest and vulnerable publicly and helping other entrepreneurs, and still in the financial advisory industry, helping advisors just because I have so much experience in that field and built everything that they're trying to build. Uh, the exponential impact has just grown more and more and more. And so there's been a blessing in that. There's been a lot of learning lessons of how I would have handled things differently with that person that sued me. Like there's been so many learning lessons that I can now apply and help others with. And the good, so I now, with some of the buyout proceeds from the firm, I bought this beautiful 80-acre estate, where I'm hosting leadership retreats and hosting teams and people and weddings and all this different stuff for people to detach from the fluorescent lights and computer screens and come out here and experience nature and beauty. And we got alpacas running around and horses and goats and chickens. And so we can take some Chicago people or some New York people that have never seen something like this and experience some countryside and just experience what God's beauty has. I'm sitting in the house right now and I'm looking out the windows over much of this acreage, and it's like it's an absolute blessing. So even in my grief, and I was doing 75 hard rucks outside in the winter here, I'd get up to this corner on the property where it's at kind of the highest point, and I can see over the entire 80 acres. And anytime I got in my feelings, I'd go up there and I'd be like, this is what God did.
I can see it, brother. When you were in Best Buy, you had this moment where you said, I'll never let anyone be in charge of my income. Then you graduated from that. You went into the financial services, and then you graduated from that. You impacted 250 people, but now you're about to impact millions of people that are also going to have ripple effect. And it's definitely a level up for you. And maybe God intended it to be this way, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And financially, right, you start over, but you can rebuild, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the thing is like anytime someone talks to me about, especially if they're an entrepreneur or I guess really any field, like you can always make more money, right? So if you're thinking about quitting, or if a bad thing happened, or if you get terminated, or you had a major expense come up, like if you believe in and believe in an abundant world, you can always make more money. So I could have taken millions of dollars of offers from these other firms that were recruiting me, but I didn't. I chose to start over because God was leading me down this vision of you're free. Don't go put yourself in a position for easy money to be in the same position you just got yourself free from, and have them in control of your destiny and have you get your family hurt again and all these different things. So do the hard thing temporarily for the larger vision and the larger impact long term.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with you 100%. The potential is so big, and thank God for America, the greatest country in the world, because
Yeah.
it's not as easy to do this in other countries and to rebuild and start over. I think that's the only country in the world where you can do that. So we need to protect the freedom that we have here.
Yes,
If you
sir.
could, if you could relive one moment in your life, whether good or bad moment, and you have the ability to change the circumstances, change your actions, kind of like you Back to the Future. You get in the DeLorean, you drive to certain
Hmm.
moment in your life, and you could either change the circumstances, which is probably going to change the whole outcome of your life, or just relive, observe the moment one more time.
Hmm. So one, I think that I'll take the bad one first, and then I'll give you a good one. The bad one, I think I would be able to get that gun out of my father-in-law's hands if I could have done that. If I could relive a moment, it would either be my wedding night or the birth of my firstborn, and
Mm,
just to soak that in. Both those instances. Now I have been blessed with 4 healthy children, and each of those births were different and interesting. But like that first time, and especially we had a daughter the first time. Uh, every dad wants a son, I think, and I got blessed with 3 beautiful girls and then a son. But that first time that little girl looks up at you and
mm,
smiles, like you're done. Like the phrase "daddy's little girl" is coined immediately in that moment.
I can definitely relate. I remember I used to jump in the air and tell everyone, I'm a father, I'm a father. It was probably one of the greatest moments. It was a rainy day, but it was one of the best days of my life. So if you remove the gun, your mother-in-law probably wouldn't have met the man she married now.
Hmm.
You okay with that?
Yep. Yeah, and I like that guy a lot, by the way. Uh, but yeah, I have my wife's father back. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure that you will reunite in heaven.
Yes, for sure.
Have you found the opportunity that's going to take care of you and your family for the rest of your life?
The opportunity. Yeah. 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 what we're building right now is something special. And my wife actually is graduating with her master's in nutrition this December, actually a month from now. Maybe actually like 17 days from now, which is pretty awesome. And she's going to join me here at the property and start her own. She's going to curate some of the meals and stuff here with her education. She's going to start her own nutrition consulting, coaching business for busy moms. So I'm really proud of her and what we're doing, like impact and continue to impact and grow on the entrepreneur space that I'm doing. Continue to build experiences here at the property and have her as a part of it. Where, before she was like the first lady, right? So I was the managing partner, owner of the firm, and she was like the first lady. And so she never really knew how people felt about her because she was Josh's wife and people had to be nice to her, right?
Right.
So she didn't know if any relationships were real or not. Now, in coming in here, so what she wanted to do was do something with me, not be a part of something I built.
That's awesome. I'm sure that it's going to create a completely different bond between you and her, and it will be an amazing opportunity for you to build something big, something that would leave a different legacy for the Kosnick family. Tell me about referrals. You know I'm obsessed with referrals, and you said that you really valued referrals throughout
Mm-hmm.
your entire career, and your business and the business of your advisors and consultants depended on referrals. What are some of the best practices that you are teaching and practicing yourself?
Yeah. So, first question I always ask, are you worthy to get referrals?
Hmm. So you put it on them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to know because most of the time people have referral reluctance is because they're insecure about something,
Right.
right? So, the referral reluctance either stems from rejection or they're insecure, like they're potentially not worthy. Right. And that's a self-love thing or a worthiness thing where I dig in on is like, okay, what do you need to do to feel worthy to get the referrals that you want? And for a lot of people, it may not be something big, maybe something small. Maybe they just need to uptick their level of service to their current clientele a little bit better. Because once you switch the mentality to, hey, I'm doing such a good job for my clients that they're referring people to me, not me to them, right? So like you switch the paradigm. Whereas when I started early in my financial career, I definitely probably wasn't worthy, but I was confident enough to like ask the questions
Yeah.
and just blindly be like, hey, who's 3 to 5 people that you know that I should be having these conversations with? Well, they don't know that because they don't know people's financial situation. So then I switched it up to like, hey, I know you don't talk about finances with your friends. It's kind of taboo. So I don't expect that you know if they have a planner or if they're doing anything. What I do want to know is, are they a good person? Are they kind of like you? Because I like working with you, and it seems like you like working with me. So if the like attracts like, if they're like you, I'd at least like the opportunity to meet them. Would you mind introducing us?
That's the key, Josh. You're the only person in the world I've heard who's using the same approach as me.
It's really like, and I think you've realized this as well. Then like, it's so much simpler than people make it
It's not about
because
who's in the
it's
market.
not about me. It's about them.
Right.
If the purpose of my business is to help others, then getting the referral isn't even about me. It's about the impact that I'm going to have on them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the key for me is like, okay, I got to stop thinking me and start thinking them. And if I can position my language and my level of service to my clients that way, they're going to refer me to anyone and everyone they deem worthy of me, not me worthy of them.
Yeah. And the first point that you've made, why people don't ask, it's either they're not confident in themselves, they feel like they're lacking the expertise, or the product, or the
Mm-hmm.
organization. It's one of the three. Sometimes they're confident in themselves, but they don't believe the service they provide is good. And sometimes they think the organization doesn't have the best intention in mind. So that's my number one
That's good.
observation,
Yeah.
learning, trying to teach referrals. And then I love what you said about how you realize that people don't know who's in the market. They don't. They just, like back in the day, 20 years ago, we used to compare our paychecks. You remember? Everybody would say, "Oh, I make this much, this much." This conversation doesn't take place anymore. People don't.
Taboo.
It's taboo. But back in the day, we used to compare our commissions and our checks, and this guy makes this much, and this guy makes. Everybody knew every family member how much they make. Now nobody talks about it. So people don't know each other's credit scores and financial situations. It's a like you call it taboo. But
Well, here, let me give you the networking scenario. Most people have been to a networking event, and most people also think they're miserable, right? And because I'm one of those. And when I first started, it's more like, what's the first question you ask when you meet someone at a networking event?
are you asking me
Yeah.
that somebody that I never met before?
Yep. Someone you've never met. You're at a cocktail networking event, happy hour or something.
What do you do for a living?
Yep. That is almost every. And what are we trying to do when we ask that question?
We're probably trying to qualify their buying power.
We're trying to size them up. You're
Yeah.
exactly right. So
But
what if?
to me, it's different though. I try to figure out if they're actually living their purpose, because even when I meet someone that I know what they do, like if I meet a bartender or a lawyer or a doctor, I want to know what's their true intention.
Yeah. Yeah, but you're different, Velko. So you teach this for a living, right? So most people ask that question because they're trying to size them up or see if they're
Yeah,
worthy for them to pitch.
of course.
It's
Yeah.
it's the worst question. It's the most routine question. It's the most annoying question I think asked in a networking event because
Yeah.
everyone knows besides you, they're trying to size you up. They're trying to see, hey, can I pitch this person? Is this person worthy of my time? Whatever it may be. What if you went into that networking event and you wanted to just have 3 quality conversations, meet 3 great people, and all you did was ask them questions about everything outside of what they do or even what their title is? What do you find enjoyment in life?
Hmm.
What's the greatest thing happening in your life right now? Like
What's
going
your
down
biggest
that path.
What's your biggest win? That's
What's your
one of my
biggest
favorite
win?
questions.
What's the thing that you don't like so much right now? Like you want to spend the entire time asking them questions to get them to think. And so that they leave that conversation with you, go and be like, that dude was different. And then you can call them the next day. You may not go for I would never go for the close, meaning close, like try and set them for an appointment right there. I'd call them the next day and be like, hey, Velko, I really enjoyed that conversation with you last night. And keep in mind, I really only asked about you. I gave you very little wiggle room to even ask about me. So they're curious no matter what. So I call you the next day and say, Velko, I had a really good vibe about you. I really liked our conversation. Would love to continue it and see how we can provide value to each other's worlds. What's your schedule look like next Wednesday for lunch? How easy do you think it is for me to set Velko in that scenario? Like
It's easy.
very
Yeah.
easy.
You build genuine interest in them personally. And by the way, I've trained a lot of financial advisors and life insurance experts and people that work on investments, and I have this process of asking them to design their dream client, and I'm sure you've done that before as
Mm-hmm.
well. And they would say somebody that makes 300 grand, somebody that has this, somebody that has that, somebody that does this. And I'm like, guys, all these people, they know money. they're not they're not probably struggling with investments and stuff like that. They got you need to not judge people based on um their profession, because they went for big professions like lawyers, doctors, uh there's so
Hey,
many there's so many
ask me about what
farmers.
mine. Ask
I'm
me
sorry.
about what mine were.
Yeah, but there's so many.
Mine, mine were someone that loved their family
Yeah,
deeply. Someone that was running a business that they cared about, that they poured blood, sweat, and tears into. I didn't qualify income, how many people they were had working for them, industry, anything of that nature. I want to know: do they love their family? Are they running a business that they have poured their blood, sweat, and tears into, and are deemed successful in that? Um, and someone that is looking for unique tax strategies. Now, what I did there was they have a need because they love their family to sell insurance to, right?
yeah,
Okay. If they love their family, they have something they care about, they need insurance. So I know that immediately when someone takes that off. If they have a business, they have multiple needs, either for potentially a buy-sell agreement, potentially key persons, all these different unique strategies that I can do in business planning. And then the last one was the tax strategy one. If they need unique tax strategies brought to their life and world, they likely have a higher income. But that's not the question I'm asking. A lot of financial advisors you've
Yeah.
probably taught in the past are like, who makes 500 grand?
Right.
Who's an attorney that's a partner and makes 500? Like, no, don't ask that question, because A, they don't know, and B, they don't want to tell you.
You can find out if somebody is wealthy without asking them how much money they make or how much money they have.
Correct.
And and just like you said, if there's so many farmers that have millions of dollars and they're not being approached by financial advisors because they're judged based on the way they dress or something like that. And it's not just farmers, it's all kinds of people that have a lot of money and they don't know how to manage their money and they need help, but they just never approached by
You know who
advisors.
makes a shit ton of money that no one approaches?
Who?
Funeral home owners.
Oh yeah. They make a lot of money.
And you know who's recession proof? Funeral home
Funeral home.
owners.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm starting to think about maybe I need to open a funeral home. Yeah. So, to go back to the referrals, I like how you proactively avoid the objections. You say, I'm not gonna, I understand you don't know anybody, because that's the first thing they say. Well, I don't know anybody. And I understand you don't know people's business. And then you made it about attraction, about how many people do you think would like me, or how many people do you think are like you, because I want to meet with more people like you.
Mhm.
And most people make referrals transactional. They make it about money and bird dogs and rewards. And what I found out in my tremendous research is that's the biggest turnoff. Offering people money and bird dogs and some type of incentives, because referral is truly the highest compliment you could receive as a professional.
Yes.
It speaks about your character, and nobody needs a reward to be honest about your character. So that's why I'm so big on intention. That's why I need to know when people do something, why do they do it? And I would ask doctors, lawyers, people that I meet in networking events. I would ask them, what do you do? But not because I care about how much money they make or qualify their buying power, mostly because I want to go deep into their intention. And I separate them on few different animal behaviors, because I think God created the animals one day before the humans, so He could show us their behavior. There's so many different behaviors from animals that human take, and there's some lions. I call them lions because they're very brutal, just transactional guys, top producers who just won't make money. They're not buyer oriented, they're deal oriented, and they just hero to zero every month, and they're just so focused on money, money, money. And I'm sure you worked with some guys like that. They were
Mhm.
just ruthless, and they usually struggle with relationships, addictions, and live a very artificial life.
Yeah, they're not typically truly happy.
Right. And they use the industry they're in for a vehicle to make money. And unfortunately and fortunately, we live in this capitalist country, which is great. Thank God for that. But so many things make money, so many professions make money, that a lot of people, probably 70-80% of the people in each industry, enter the industry with the wrong intentions. I mean, there's certain cultures that would push their kids into a certain profession because there's a lot of money there, and they would go through education. It's like, I think I read statistics that like 50% of all doctors and lawyers are clinically depressed because they hate everything about being a doctor or being a lawyer. And there's probably financial advisors that hate it too, but it pays well,
Mhm.
and they do it. And then there's some wolves in sheep's skin. We've all seen those people that really have the same bad intentions, but they've perfected their presentation,
Hmm.
and they talk the talk, they don't walk the walk. Those are dangerous because they turn off people to our industries, and people get disappointed, and that's what creates the bad names. Then there is a category that I call foxes, and foxes are pretenders. They're just temporary in that industry. They're checking it out, and they end up being checked out. Like people that are not 100% committed. They're not going all in, and they use it as a safety net until they find something better, or they expect it to do something for them. And then I have a category I called dogs. Dogs are like um, beasts that turned on their own identity. They put their tail between their legs so they don't hunt, but they get free food. You know, a lot of people say dog is the best friend of the human, but they did an incredible study about dogs, and they would like attack the human, their master, to see what would be the reaction of the dog after the master is dead, or they would pretend to be dead and stuff like that. And a lot of dogs are not really emotionally attached. I think there was one or two breeds that are actually emotionally attached because they love you coming back home. They're like, but it's all about food. They're literally
Mm.
exchange this loyalty for food. It's so low. I think horses are the best friends for humans. You know, the meek horses.
Horses are like big dogs, is what I've seen because I have horses here as well.
Yeah.
They're like big dogs, and it's funny and amazing to watch them.
They just serve. They love to serve. If you remember those old cowboy movies, there's no other animal that you would get pissed drunk, and then your pet, your animal, will take you home. Literally, horses will take these cowboys home and take care of them, and just horses are people, employees with good intentions that need strong leadership. They have good intentions, but they lack the skill. They lack the discipline. They need somebody to constantly be around them and lead them, and they're servants. Um, so that's another category. Stewards, I call them also, is the next category. People that are actually born to do this. People that feel obligation to do the right thing. People that protect their reputation. People that protect their credibility. And it's about 10% of people in every industry that are true stewards. So I only work with stewards and horses. I try to avoid dogs, wolves, foxes, and lions. And I kind of trick people into a casual conversation, and I squeeze the actual intention they have, because I've been uh, most of those categories. You know, I lived in an environment and worked in an environment with a bunch of lions and wolves, and I went through that, so I wasn't happy, and I finally became a steward, and now I'm on a mission to find people where they at and lead them to stewardship. You know, sorry for taking such a long time to explain,
No, it's good.
but intention is so incredibly important. You know, because if we lack if we lack intention, no matter how hard we work, a lot of times we just don't see the results,
Yeah.
especially with referrals. All of those categories, lions, wolves, foxes, dogs, they're not interested in referrals because they hide a lot of shame, a lot of guilt. They don't believe in themselves. They don't believe in the product. They don't believe in the organization. Like I used to sell life insurance and I didn't believe in the product. I was 22 years old. I wouldn't buy life insurance that time. I had much different priorities like cars, motorcycles. Life insurance was the last thing I wanted to buy. And I got outsold by 70, 80-year-old guys, and I went to follow them one day. I was like, I'm gonna go with Uncle Rick here and just follow him, see how he closes these deals on the kitchen table. And then I realized that his presentation is way more intense than mine. He was asking some deep questions, and he would not let people he would not take no for an answer. He just wouldn't. He'd be like, "Oh yeah, Frank, what are you gonna do with your $1,500 income when you die tomorrow? What are you gonna leave these kids? I'm not leaving this table until you sign." And I'm like, "Whoa, that's intense." And then
Yeah.
people would cry, people would get emotional. He would get the wife involved, the kids involved, and then and people would give him a hug at the end, and they all cry, and then he walks away, and he's like, "All right, we're going to the next address." And I'm like, "Dude, I just realized that I give up on the first rejection, and it's because I wasn't truly uh,
Convicted.
in the product. You know, if you don't believe in the product, no chance you're going to transfer that energy." But
Right.
Frank had wrote, hundreds of checks to widows and widowers, and had seen the effect and the benefit of life insurance. He actually believed that it's a great idea, and it's stupid not to have it. So he was way more convincing than I was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, "Frank, you're the real deal." So he was a steward. He's probably still selling life insurance somewhere. He's probably in his 90s right now. But he would not take no for an answer. He would get more and more passionate with each rejection. Big smile. He was always positive, and he would bring more and more advantages and benefits and just what if situations. And eventually people would break down, and they would be like, "You're right. I don't have a plan B." So I think that everybody deserves financial advice. Everybody deserves financial education, regardless of where they at in the income bracket. Maybe some of them are not so attractive, but people that have good intention deserve to know about the services that financial advisors are offering. If anybody
Agreed.
deserves, is the lower class. They need to know about money and taxes and things like that.
Well, and it's taxes maybe it depends on like it's pretty clear cut for those that are employees, but yeah, they definitely need education, which our education system fails every one of us as far as financial planning is concerned. I mean, there's nothing taught, and it's on purpose, in my opinion.
I love that you are pouring into your kids, and I just recently started doing that. And I'm like, I'm spending so much time building these workshops for people, for strangers, for clients, for students. I was like, what if I start doing this workshop for my kid and my family on Saturdays? So I'm starting to create a tradition where I teach them things, some high level stuff sometimes, because I want to prepare my own family. And it's amazing some of the conversations we have when they learn from me and when they realize what I teach, just creates a different connection. So
Yeah.
tell me about your family. How do you pass on your passion, expertise? How do you prepare them for life? Is there any specific routine that you have, or
I don't think there's specific routine. I think it's specific presence. So there's traditions that we have and stuff, but I think the biggest thing I want people to take away is that you got to be present with the time that you have. And so, and also just being observed, not looking at your phone, but being observant of your kids, understanding when they're not being themselves and talking to them and getting down on their level. If they're little, like get down on their level, like kneel down, sit down, whatever it is to get on their level to look them eye to eye.
Mm,
And, I have my third daughter struggles with some anxiety. So we actually worked through a workbook, and I talked to her the other night. I'm teaching her, hey, the enemy puts the voices in our heads. So we need to talk to ourselves more than listen to ourselves. We need to tell ourselves when we have a bad thought to tell ourselves that we have a good thought. We turn it around, and here's an example, and here's how we do that. And then this workbook that we got that works through some anxiety is really cool and productive, and she likes it because she doesn't want to feel that way. No one wants to live with anxiety, but some people struggle with it more. Um, spending that time roughhousing with my son, there's things like that. Teaching my kids to look people in the eye, to shake their hands, introduce themselves. Um, just trying to, especially with three daughters, breeding as much self-confidence in them and knowing that where their confidence comes from is God, and that they're always going to be loved, and by me, by God, by their mother, and knowing that they don't have to seek external validation from freaking creepers on the internet if they're doing TikToks and social media stuff and all that. So I don't think there's any specific sequences or stuff of that nature. It's more or less just being really present and enjoying their company and teaching them all the things that I would have wanted to know. Now, also like this dance world, I knew nothing about dance. Now all three of my girls dance,
Mm.
and so I've learned a lot. And like I don't enjoy being at their competitions, except I enjoy watching them in their joy. So like the dance competitions, I think they're freaking nuts. I think they suck being at. However, I love watching the joy it brings them. So I show up.
You need to jump in and participate. That's true love right there.
Yeah. Probably not, but yeah.
What do they dance? Ballet or
They do all like ballet, jazz, lyrical, whatever the category, like basically every category is hip
That's
hop.
awesome. My wife is a long-term ballet dancer and instructor, and we just had a son. And she was like, "Maybe he will dance ballet." I was like, "No, not at all. He would not." I'm like, he's not going to be doing that. So, as far as taxes go, a lot more smaller companies are starting to follow the example of these big, massive companies and take advantage of what they do. Have you noticed that in the business field there, like intellectual property and trust and registering companies in Santa Fe and stuff like that? Just it's becoming more and more popular, even with small business and medium-sized business, to avoid paying big taxes.
Well, I think so. I don't know. I haven't noticed that trend of the Santa Fe thing. And here's what I'll just say. I think it's incumbent upon you as a business owner to get a really smart CPA that is proactive, not reactive. I think it's incumbent upon you to learn as much as possible and seek outside advice to mitigate your taxes as much as legally possible. Like that's just it. There's a simple answer is like you got to take the time to want to
How do you
because tax.
recognize how do you recognize a good CPA? What are some good qualifying questions to know that your CPA will be proactive? He will give you the plan, he will give you the steps, the practical steps that you need to follow so you are prepared before each quarter or before the end of the deal, the end of the year, so you're not stressing out on last week of the April or whatever.
They're meeting with you at least 2-3 times a year before year end. That would be one way. Another way is that they're actually strategizing with you on how to mitigate taxes before the end of the year. So like that's in those meetings is they're actually kind of operating almost like a financial planner would to understand what you have going on in your business. Excuse me, how you can leverage certain levers in your business to mitigate taxes, like if it's buying a truck before the end of the year because it's a need and that can be a immediate write-off, whatever it may be, positioning different things, taking advantage of certain codes in the tax code. They're bringing you ideas and helping you plan before the year end. The vast majority of CPAs I see basically just take your P&Ls, take your 1099s, all the different income stuff that you have coming in. They put it in their system and they go, okay, well, this is how much you owe this year. Vast majority.
Yeah,
They're just paper pushers.
I agree.
So it's really easy to identify the good ones by, are they meeting with you regularly? Are they helping you strategize on how to mitigate taxes because they understand your business well enough? And are they bringing you ideas from the tax code to help, again, reduce that tax burden?
If they're not, fire them and find somebody that will.
Correct.
Hey, taxes are one of the most important thing in this country. So, what are some resources that you would suggest to our viewers about budgeting, about accounting, about taxes, about financial planning? Maybe books, maybe applications that you use that help a lot with with these things.
We're in the information age, so it's not lack of information, it's lack of application. So mint.com is a good budgeting resource, and they also, and investopedia.com has a great amount of information on it, from basic stuff to really complex stuff. Uh, there's infinite books out there. I don't have a specific top three. I actually just thought of that. I was like, I don't have a specific top three. I could probably go through my shelves. But there's infinite knowledge. It's finding a financial planner you can trust. It's also doing some of your own research. And then it's not saying, because look, if you Google whole life insurance, you're going to see about 50% bad, 50% good. So what do you decide? What is it, good or is it bad? Because you can read articles that say it's the worst thing and biggest scam ever, and you read articles that say all the wealthy use it, which they do, by the way. But you got to find out what's right for your situation and work well with a financial planner to go, okay, Mr. or Mrs. Financial Planner, I read this. What are your thoughts? I read these two opposing views. What are your thoughts as it pertains to our plan? Right. So it's doing your own research. It's a mix of that, along with having trusted advisors in your life that's their sole job, is to help you get to the next level and make sure you achieve the dreams that you have.
Yeah. Where do you invest your money?
There's not one place. I'm well diversified. So I have real estate, Roth IRAs, whole life insurance, taxable mutual funds, individual stocks. I invest in a couple startup companies. I'm all across the board. I think that diversity is key in investments.
Do you invest in crypto?
I don't at this point. So first of all, when I was registered, we were not allowed to. So there's certain things that so I couldn't even invest in Facebook when it IPO'd because I
Oh, really?
was Series 7 licensed. So there's certain things that when we were when I was licensed and in practice, there's certain things we can't do.
Why do they do that? Why do they put these limitations?
Well, so on the IPO issue, it's about, could you potentially have inside knowledge and you're an
Oh, I
advisor.
see.
So that one I can tell you. The crypto one, I'd take some guesses, but I don't really know the answer as to why we couldn't have our own money in crypto.
Do you think crypto has a future or no?
So I think yes and no. And the yes is, I really hope that we don't go to a centralized digital currency. I hope that, so my hope is that whether it's Bitcoin or something else, that remains utterly independent and is something. And then if the World Economic Forum and all these bullshit trying to create one world order, or Federal Reserve, they create their own coin, that we all flock to the independent channel versus that bullshit, because they're only creating that to control us. So if it has a future, I hope it's in a completely private and independent space that stays away and gives us an alternative from that government controlled bullshit.
And what's your favorite stock?
I can't give that advice. I'm still licensed.
Okay.
So I can tell you what I invest in as my own personal investments, but I cannot give advice because I am still licensed.
Do you think it's a good advice for people to invest in stocks that they're emotionally attached to, like brands that they actually use and love and appreciate?
Uh, All right. So I'm not going to answer that question directly because it could fall into advice as well. However, what I will say is where most people screw up their investments is in their emotions.
Hmm.
If we were all 100% logical people, you actually wouldn't need a financial advisor. The problem is when it's your money, you are emotional. You have emotional attachments to it. So, as an example, even though I know all this, I've been in this for 20 years, my wife and I have our own financial advisor. I don't do my own investing. I don't do my own any of that. Okay. My financial advisor, we go to, because again, when it's our money, we're emotionally attached to it. I can give you proper advice, logical advice as an advisor to another client, right? Because we don't have the emotional attachment to it. So again, if we were all 100% logical people like Spock from Star Trek, wouldn't need financial advisors. The problem is we're emotional beings. That's how we were wired. So when it's our money, we're emotional, and we typically make stupid decisions when we operate on emotion.
You need an observer who's not emotionally attached, because
Yes.
we have blind spots sometimes that we don't consider too.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is awesome. Who do you trust the most in your life?
God, and then my wife.
Who's been the most consistent in your life besides God?
Besides God, so we go earthly. My wife.
That makes sense.
16 plus years, man. It's getting there. Yeah.
Well, Josh, it's been such a great pleasure to get to know you more. I think we're going to be lifetime friends.
No, I appreciate it, brother. It's been a good conversation.
Uh,
Hopefully everyone gets a lot of, I mean, we were all over the board, but I hope there's a high impact had here today.
yeah, and we can always do it again on your podcast or my podcast again. I'd love to have you as a guest in the future, one more time at least.
Absolutely, brother.
Tell me what's wrong with the world right now, and what's your prediction for the next 24 months?
Just one thing wrong with the world? All right, here's the biggest thing. We fall for our government's divide and conquer way too freaking much. The people are the power only when we can agree. Okay. So as long as they keep us divided, they retain all the power. And so that's why they pull all this stuff with race baiting to keeping black versus white away from each other. If black people and white people just got together, the government would lose all their control over us. But they keep us as far apart as possible. They cause race baiting through the media. They use media as a division or arm of their propaganda. Whether it's that, whether it's abortion, whether it's immigration, whatever tool they have, even COVID caused divide. So they will divide and conquer us. And so to that tune, we need to stop choosing political parties as identities. You are not a Democrat. You're a freaking human being. You are not a Republican. You are a human being. And in fact, you're an American human being. Stop identifying as one of those two parties. Identify as an American and vote as an American. Vote for America and stop falling for their bullshit.
Who do you think is going to be the next American president?
I don't think they're going to have an election next year. I think they're going to try and pull some shit.
You think?
Yeah. So here's my bold prediction. If there's an election next year, I don't think Biden will be the nominee. I think it'll be Gavin Newsom.
Oof, that's scary.
It's very scary because he's a communist. Secondly, I think they'll cheat as much as they can. I mean, yeah, it's going to be a messy next 12 to 24 months.
Well, of course they're going to cheat. There's no other way.
So we got to overwhelmingly show up. We got to in Wisconsin, I'm in Wisconsin. Wisconsin was one of those states that had 3 a.m. spike for Biden.
Right.
Like I'm considering getting a group together all across the state to sit ourselves at the ballot boxes. No cheating either side. No ballot dumps. No.
But there were groups last elections. There were groups like that last elections. They did it anyways. They kicked them out. Yeah.
Well, I don't need to be inside. I'll be outside, but just show up and just be there. And they're going to have that all over the state and we can organize. But that's the thing, man, is like.
I was so disappointed with Wisconsin.
It was a mess, man. It's interesting. Wisconsin could go either way every different time. The fact that it was done in so many states, from Michigan to Wisconsin to Pennsylvania to Arizona, you name it. And it was all that 3 a.m. But we go to bed with Trump in the lead. And at 3 a.m., this has never happened in American history, ever. 3 a.m., there's a spike where all of a sudden it shoots way up. And now Biden's in the lead and you wake up and you go, what the fuck?
All the dead people voted.
You're like, what? And half the country goes, oh yeah, that makes sense. How does that make sense?
They hated Trump so much.
I know. The media did a great job. They did a great job of propaganda to drive the hate on him. It's just incredible that many people fell for it.
They didn't care if it was fair or unfair, as long as the job gets done.
because he's a threat to their way of life. And that's where more and more people need to wake up is like, look, it's not a Republican thing or a Democrat thing, because there's really probably only 10 political figures in Washington total that are fighting for us. And they're the ones that get attacked all the time. It's Matt
Yeah.
Gaetz. It's that those two women that are on the Republican side. They even hate any Democrat that steps out of line. Like they'll attack them. Like Eric Adams in New York right now,
Or
the mayor.
RFK.
Well, RFK, they kick him out. Like, but the Eric Adams, that New York mayor, that immigration has become a problem, and he's seeing it in his city become a problem. He says something about it, and all of a sudden, something pops up negative about him. They're like, "Don't step out of line, or we'll trash you." So the establishment is deep, man. It's been going on for decades, and just more and more people need to wake up faster.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy. I come from communism and socialism, and it doesn't end well. I'm telling you. I can definitely feel from miles away when freedoms are being stripped. But the good thing about capitalism is that the people's pockets, the people's dollars decide what's a good product, what's a bad product, what's a good service, what's a bad service. And I just recently made a post about Disney, because we grew up with Disney. We love Disney, especially my wife. She loves Disney. And they kind of crossed the line, in my opinion, with the way they use their platform to attack. I would say attack. Some people would think it's too extreme, but to bring sexuality to children. Sex plus children equals pedophilia in my mind. Pedophilia is, I'm against that. So they lost 54% in 1 year. They lost over $200 billion in 1 year.
Yeah.
That's probably the greatest brand suicide in our history. And
Well,
you see what happened with Bud Light. Now they're partnering with UFC because that's the only the only contrast they could create, you know.
they're trying
And
to go manly again to get their. Here's the thing with Bud Light. I'll tell you
Dana
this.
likes money, so he'll take their money.
Yeah, but and that's a great business decision for him. However, I'll tell you, Bud Light's never coming back. And here's how I know. So my wife's family's super conservative down in Indiana, Indiana farm boys. All were farmers. Now they have great businesses, entrepreneurs selling semis. I go down for my wife's grandfather's funeral, and they bring in beer to the wake and then to the funeral. And none of it was Bud Light. These guys were all Bud Light drinkers.
Before.
You know what beer they brought in?
What?
Yingling.
Oh, from Maine?
Yeah. No, or Pennsylvania, something
Pennsylvania?
like that.
Yeah.
But the oldest American beer. That Bud Light will never get those guys back. Doesn't matter if they sponsor UFC, if they sponsor NFL, anything else, and they sponsor the Army. It doesn't matter. Bud Light lost them forever. These guys are never coming back.
Yeah. I think that every company that took that strategy to ride the wave of the woke had lost short term and long term in the aftermath. Look at their situation today. It's a losing strategy because
Yeah.
deep inside, there's not too many differences between Republicans and Democrats. You know,
No.
80% we agree on everything. The truth is the truth, you know. And we all know deep inside what's good and what's evil. So I think they get carried away with their acceptance of everything and indifference towards evil, and just trying to be mixing love and kindness with tolerating evil, which is
Yeah.
that's the part of disagreement, and then stripping freedom, which this country has been based on for all these years. Freedom is the number one core value to America.
Yep. Agreed.
So, Josh, anything encouraging for end of this conversation? It's been great pleasure to get to know you.
Yeah, so I'll just leave you with this: is despite all the bad stuff Velko and I just said, we still live in the greatest country. We still have an opportunity to go out there and achieve personal excellence. Andy Frisella, one of our mutual mentors, talks about personal excellence is the ultimate rebellion. Go be excellent. No matter what life throws at you, get up, stand up, keep putting one foot in front of the other, and create excellence in your life. And if I can help in any way, you can find me at Josh Kosnick on all social media, joshkosnick.com. Spartan Leadership is my podcast. If I can help you in any way, would love to. But just remember who you are. Remember who God created you to be, and keep putting one foot in front of the other.
In what ways do you help the most?
Well, for following me, like, you can get a lot of inspiration. If you specifically want business coaching, EOS implementation, strategies to help business, and systems and processes to help business get the most from their business while living the life of their dreams, like, that's really where I get a lot of juice in helping people. Is I do individual coaching. We have some masterminds as well. But it is specifically, like, I'm putting out content on a regular just to inspire people from all aspects of life. Like you started with on the balance side of things. I don't believe in balance, but I believe in integration. So my faith that you're going to see out there, you're going to see my family out there in the forefront. You're going to see my fitness out there in the forefront. You're going to get a lot of business advice, of course, mixed in there, and a lot of fun as well. So I try to mix it all together to show, like, hey, you can have a life that you can integrate a lot of great things, all the things that are really important in life, and do it in a big way.
It's all one life, right? Integration. Same values and same ethic in everything that you do.
Agreed.
Hey Josh, thank you so much for this conversation. Make it a great day, and hope to see you again. You're in Wisconsin, I'm in Illinois. That's not too far.
Not too far at all, brother.
Next time when you're in Chicago, please let me know, and I will host you for a great dinner or lunch or breakfast, whatever the time is. It will be my pleasure and joy.
I appreciate that.